more times, but today marks the first shift in our cadence and how we're structuring these calls. Hey Mitch. So today's call is going to feel very different. This is much more hands-on. This is going to feel way less big picture and just trying to kind of work through some nitty-gritty in some cases, and also like how we organize ourselves for getting the coordination work done, moving projects and things like that. So this may not be the kind of call that everybody's going to want to come to every week. We're definitely optimizing for Tuesday as the one where it's going to be more big picture and like adding new stuff and having conversations about new stuff. And this is more hands-on, like let's get stuff done. But these calls, the Thursday calls are like, these are open to everybody, of course. Like the whole idea is, if you want to contribute and if you want to help coordinate, this is the place. So let me just see. I got a note from Rex just now. Okay, good. So and Tim, you were just saying something. I'm just trying to get some last minute. Tim, are you suggesting? Okay, hold on.
Am I suggesting what?
Sorry, I'm
problem.
I'm getting texts from people, but I'm also seeing that they're showing up in the channel here.
Got it.
So, hey Griff, welcome. All right, let's dive in. This check-in question is, what's the single most important thing that this team can do to make work more rewarding? And I mean, not just work in life. I mean, work at the TEC. So rather than just throw this at somebody randomly without giving them a lot of time, does anybody have any immediate thoughts and are willing to go first?
I can jump in. I mean, I think the most important thing is that we go back to the duocracy approach, assuming people want that. It's like, I think it's really about, in general, people deciding how they want to work. Some people really prefer that their tasks are given to them. Some people really like the duocracy approach where you just decide what you want. So just identifying what you want to, how you want to contribute to the TEC, how you want that structured, and then making sure that you can have it that way, because you should be able to. That's the great thing about DAOs, is that in general we can kind of structure the system to work for us. That's what I would say. And maybe I will pass it to Tam.
Sure. I like that. I know what works for me. I like to be very productive. I like to make sure people get credit that's due them, and I like to have a lot of fun with the people that I work with. I think, making sure that people are acknowledged for the work that they do, publicly acknowledged, privately acknowledged, just that I think is really important. Yeah, that's I don't know, it's not the one single thing. It's hard to say the single most important thing to make the work more rewarding. I think it's really, like, kind of what Griff said, it like depends on what's rewarding for each individual. And I'll pass to Wanka.
Thank you, Tam. I'd say listening to outside voices. I think that there's a really big community, and that we need to improve the ways that we receive input from the community, and always being open to no voices and different ideas. I think that's a good thing to do. I'll pass it to Mitch.
Hey there. What makes work feel rewarding? Being acknowledged. I think is the biggest thing. Like getting that feeling that like you're doing something useful and you're being successful at it. It's like hell, sometimes just that feeling of gratitude encourages people to do so much work for free because they feel like they're doing something that's inspiring and they're doing it well. And I will pass it on to Nate.
Thanks, Mitch. Yeah. Honestly, I think things like we're doing today. I think more collaboration and executing work. I think that working in isolation is more difficult than I gave it credit for. And I think that having more collaboration and collective working together is something that we can start to do that will be more rewarding and more productive in a lot of ways. And so I'm really excited to see how this 2-hour session goes. So, and I will pass it over to Bianca.
Thank you, Nate. I think that maybe putting out there things that other contributors can help with, because maybe like it's not knowledgeable for everybody what is the needs and like how people can contribute to the work being done. So I guess I would say that. And I'll pass it to MT.
Thanks. This is a hard one. I guess I'd say probably being productive, like just being able to look back and feel accomplished. And I guess that goes with a bit of expectations, like knowing what do we have to do and just sort of being able to act on it. That's for me very rewarding. And with that, I will pass it over to Laser.
Thanks, Shanti. Well, I think that we need a good organization, and the most important, be on the same page, everyone. And well, I think we all know that TEC is very different to all the DAOs in the space. So we need to keep working like a family, friends, and not just co-workers. Yeah. And who's left? Bear? Maybe Bear?
Yeah, thank you, Asit. Yeah, I think it's also like for me it's really good and really interesting to have like a chance to redefine what work actually means for everyone and for the people doing the work, compared to what traditional work is like outside in the corporate world or in the traditional world. So yeah, just being able to redefine it and try to design a new concept where all of these things that everyone is mentioning are incorporated, right? Like fun, productivity, interest, acknowledgement, like all of these things are like new principles or values that come up into a new definition of what work could be. So for me, that's really interesting. And with that, I think that's everyone. So I'll just pass it back to you, Gideon.
Okay, thank you. I think it's really important to ask these questions every once in a while. For me, it basically comes down to kind of a combination of two things. One, I just love getting stuff done. That feels really good. Like when it's stuff that matters and you're getting it done with a team. I just love that feeling, and I love the momentum that builds from that. That's just fun. And then also, I love being able to look back, like a couple years later, and like see like a big, like massive accomplishment that a team that I worked on having gotten it done, and looking back and being able to celebrate that feels so good too. Like day before yesterday, Give Power, like Griff, I'm imagining that felt pretty good to get that shipped, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So in this next part, I just want to give opportunity, just super quick updates. NT, do you want to share with folks what you found from the Twitter stats?
Sure. Give me 1 second to open it. I didn't know we had to share it. But let me just share my screen. These are some insights from our Twitter account in the past 28 days. So we've been making more tweets, but overall, what I think is more impressive is that we have increased our impressions by more than 200%. Also, the profile visits and a bit of the followers. And actually, some of the posts that have came out of the creation service efforts and some others have had really nice engagement. So, for instance, this is one with the most. This is our most engaged post with 11.4%. And the other has 9.1, which is the first thread with the creation service. And to put this in perspective, the average of our engagement is around 4%, and that's true for at least for what I saw on the internet. That's pretty common to be around 4%. And seeing these posts having 2 times our engagement or more is I guess confirms to some extent that we've been doing a good job lately. That's pretty much it. I don't know if there's any question or follow up, but that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, NT. Any questions about that before we move on? These are just quick updates. Nate, hey, would you mind just giving an update on what's happening with getting funds transitioned?
Yeah, sure. So we have the multi-sig that's ready for the Communitas. The Communitas is already on the comms, and the Team DAO marketing team will be sending the remaining funds by today. And so that will be in the Sampo multi-sig for the transition team in coordination. And then the stewards will be retiring soon as well. But outside of that, the runway for us should be pretty solid with these almost 15,000 that are going to be sent from the marketing multi-sig.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Nate, and thanks for just staying on that and helping to just make that happen. It's actually pretty important because it determines whether or not we had to just drop everything in the next couple of weeks and pull together another proposal for this team. So this gives us a little bit more runway to get stuff done and actually pull together a good, meaningful proposal for probably the February timeframe. Okay, any other quick updates before we go on? 5, 4, 3.
Yeah.
Yes. Juan, are you going to say about the page?
Yes, that
Yeah.
the advanced page was launched yesterday, and it's super cool. So that this would be something just to have in mind for the communications. And yeah, I was talking with us basically about this.
Yeah, I checked that out. That's really awesome.
Yes, I will make a thread or something maybe tomorrow because today is a Twitter space. So maybe tomorrow I will post it on Twitter.
That's great. And actually, just based on what I've seen on Twitter, this is just a side thought, but Fridays sometimes are a little bit dead. Maybe Monday is good. If we really want to get some attention around the advanced page, then maybe do it on Monday. Okay, so all right, so those are the updates. This should be pretty quick, this next section, but there's just some confusion I've noticed about who are we talking about, what meetings are we talking about. So I'm just proposing a simplification, distinguishing between contributors and coordinators. So this call, so what do I mean? A contributor, I'm just using that in the general sense of the term, as basically any community member who contributes in any way, variety of ways, and for any variety of incentives. It's a very broad term. It's very inclusive. It's meant to be that way. The coordinators is really referring to like this specific team of folks who, were part of that proposal, and their job is really just about coordinating that work wherever we can. It's also a lot about kind of like taking over, making sure that the kind of like day-to-day operations of the DAO, kind of a minimal set of operations that we need in order to keep this place functioning, that team is doing that. So basically, the Tuesday call is really the contributors call. And by the way, coordinators are part of contributors. It's a nested, like, contributors is the bigger term. Like that includes everybody. So Tuesday's call is a contributors call. It's open for everybody. And those calls are going to be more focused on bigger ideas, future kind of planning, thinking about like what the TEC needs to do next, kind of processing ideas, and then also looking back on big projects and just making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable. And then this call going forward is going to be much more hands-on. It's going to be more about moving through on projects. And as I said at the outset of this call, like, if you're an active contributor and you're trying to prioritize your time, prioritize the Tuesday call. If you really want to, roll up your sleeves and get into some of the projects, this is the call, and this is like a 2-hour call. And so we're going to make, Rex isn't here yet, but we're going to make some tweaks to assuming everybody's fine with this, we're going to make some changes to the Discord channels just to simplify this and simplify the way we describe these meetings. Any thoughts, feedback on that? Okay. My sense is people don't really care that much about these. Are just names, but like it'll help simplify things and clarify things. So that's good. Okay, so Rex is not here yet, so we're gonna push this question of organizing events and tweets back a little bit. It's actually unfortunate he's not here right now because this is partially, he was the spark for talking about this next part. His comment on Tuesday got me thinking. What he said in that call on Tuesday was like, because I was talking about how we want to start the strategic planning process for the TEC starting in February. And so that there'll be like a run up to that. There'll be some advanced work that we're going to need to be doing. And a big part of this is going to be figuring out the processes that we can keep going over time so that we're doing a better job of listening to the outside, right? Listening to people outside of our Discord server. So that's a big part of what that's going to look like. And in particular, token engineers and people in the field broadly defined. So, but Rex's response was, and I had a little bit of a defensive, like, oh man, come on, like we need to do some planning. And he was like, yeah, but let's not get too hung up, right? I'm oversimplifying what he said. It was like, basically, let's not get too hung up on planning. And so I thought about that and I was like, yeah, that actually is really important. So here's what I'm proposing as a way of kind of dealing with this. It's basically thinking of this as kind of 3 tiers running simultaneously. Near term, medium term, and long term. So the near term is kind of what we're doing right now, right? It's like time frame is 2 weeks to 2 months. And, it's basically like, if you look at the list of stuff that's down below and the stuff that was in the proposal, like that's kind of defined there, right? It's like, these are things that people can bring up and be like, hey, I want to do this. People talk it through. It's like, yeah, let's do it. So that's the one that keeps us more flexible, allows us to be more responsive. Medium term is like 2 months to 2 seasons. What do I mean by seasons? Seasons are probably going to be about 3 months long. These are funding seasons. So this is the coordination teams, this is kind of the tempo of the coordination team, which is basically defined by the funding proposals. And so, at the end of the season, then basically we get feedback from the community. Like, do you still believe in this team? Is it doing a good job? If so, continue to fund it. If not, don't. And so that's the place where we can kind of like plan about the seasons, like what's the focus of the seasons, where are we headed, that kind of stuff. That's kind of that medium term focus. And then finally there's the longer term, which is basically allowing us to take not like a super, like I personally don't believe in like 10-year plans, just especially in this space, but something like 2 seasons to 2 years out is what I'm thinking is like a practical thing. But that will allow us to have like some bigger targets that we're going after, big projects, and go after those. So basically, this is just a way of, and this graphic is something I pulled together in like a minute, but it's basically showing that like the yellow one is the long-term thing, purple is the medium, so you get like in the course of like a 2-year or like a 1-year yellow time frame, you might have like 2 of the medium ones. And then a bunch of the blue near-term ones. So what I was thinking we could do is not do a super long breakout, but do just like probably 10 minutes to just talk about this, like in smaller groups. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. So let's break out into 2 rooms. And if when you go to the room, if you can just make sure that one person is taking notes, and so that means that we need somebody in each room who has right access to clarity. So we may need to move people around, but right now I'm just going to assign numbers, and then we'll go to these breakout rooms. So from what I'm looking on the screen right now, Mitch, you're number 1. I'm 2, Acid 1, Bear 2, Bianca 1, NT 2, Griff 1, Wonka 2, Nate 1, Tam 2. So now if you scroll down, you'll see if you were number 1, go to the red breakout room. If you're number 2, go to the blue breakout room, and we'll just have a chat and just meet back here at 35. No, let's say 40 minutes after the hour. And I'll take a look and make sure that everybody's got a note taker. Does this make sense? Is everybody cool with what we're doing? If not, feel free to ask.
Yeah, this is cool. I was just asking Acid if he wanted to hop out with me for a minute so we could practice his Twitter space before the 8 p.m. Does that throw things off too much?
Nope.
Acid,
Yeah.
is that?
Actually, I was just asking in the chat, is there anything required for me or anyone else for this Twitter space that we're expected to do?
Yes, I did respond in that DM, but here is the doc. I also shared it there that we're using for it tonight.
Great. Okay, cool.
So we'll join after the breakout room exercise.
Hey, and Tam, do you want to use a little bit of time at the end of this call for anything for this, to prep for this?
Sure, that could be great. Yeah.
Okay, think a little bit when you're talking to Acid, and when you come back, let me know like how much time you'd like.
Okay, thanks.
And honestly, I have to jump at the top of the hour, so I if we're gonna do the prep, I would love to be part of that.
Okay, so how about when we come back from the break, let's just take like 10 minutes to talk about this. Does that work?
Yeah, the only thing is I don't know that it's the best use of everyone's time here.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want to waste time for people that it's not going to be so interesting for.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I shared the document. I'm happy to sort of share the thinking behind how it'll flow and maybe get some feedback, but I wouldn't want to take more than like 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we're all gonna go away for 10 minutes, talk about this strategic planning timeframe thing. Like, how do we feel about divvying this up, like basically thinking about it in kind of 3 time frames like this? And then Tim and Acid are gonna go off, plan a little bit. We're gonna come back and let's call it 15 minutes. Okay, so quarter till the hour, and then we're gonna spend 5 minutes talking about the upcoming call, community call, and then we'll go on to the next topic. Sound good? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes.
Good.
Okay, let me know if you have any problems getting to your room. If you forgot your room, what room number you were. Okay, hey. Hey, so here's what I was thinking. You just tell me if this works for you. I was just going to basically kick off the next section about the roles stuff with like this bigger picture, just very briefly, like the role, separating roles from souls and like why that's important to do. And then hand it over to you to kind of like walk people through the documents. And then also, I thought we could just end with like talking about the clarity, the idea of using clarity to track this stuff. Well, what do you think? Any?
Yeah, I think sounds great. I think I could go over the Google Docs, right? I think that's the main document, and maybe use one of the functions as an example. Maybe the what do you think on using maybe the technology support one that has more roles to serve as an example to explain everything and explain the structure for the role, and then explain how are we thinking that we could use clarity to organize this. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, and then the next section after this, we're going to be talking about interest groups, so we can maybe start with the document that you have already there as a seed, and then get the conversation going around that without filling that out.
For that section, should we also bring out the role, the interest group coordinator role?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that because you did, I mean, you spent some time thinking about that, so it's like, let's bring that out, and then use that as the seed, and then have some conversations, breakout conversations around that, and had people add to it or take stuff away or whatever.
Okay. But just to understand, you mean like the doc for the role, not the doc for the one from before about the structure and the support and the requirements for the interest groups. You mean the role, right?
Yeah, let's bring them both up. But I was talking about
Both.
the roles.
Okay.
The role one that you did. But let's have both documents there just for people to be able to refer to. That's a good point.
Okay. Sounds
Can
good.
you,
Yeah.
I think I've got that handy, but let me see. I'll make sure. Actually, can you share that one into the stream once we come back?
I'll share both links. I'll just add them to the notes, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome.
Perfect, yeah.
Thank you.
I would only ask you if you could share screen with the docs, because I'm doing the recording, so my computer freezes a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll be your demo guy, the wingman, and you just tell me what you want me to point to.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. I think we can start what you mentioned, like with the separating roles from souls, if you want to take on that, and then we can start jumping on the docs. I'll just add the docs to all the docs from the two sections that we're going to talk about to the notes, so they are easy access for everyone, and we can go from there.
Perfect. Thanks, Bear.
Yeah, thank
Sounds
you.
good. Okay, can you bring your team back and I'll get the other team?
Sure. Yeah, sure, for sure.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I was just reaching out to Tam to see if she still wants to talk about this upcoming call. So while we're waiting to hear back on that, any high level, I see everybody's got the notes going. Here, let me share my screen again. So good notes in here. Anybody have like just high level comments about not so much strategic plan, like what we're going to do, but just this idea of separating things into kind of 3 tiers? Feedback on that specifically?
Yeah. So very quickly on our record room, I got the sense that we sort of agreed that it is overall a nice, a brilliant idea, but we have to find a balance between not planning way too much ahead, and keeping in the short term things to do consistently. Um, and the other thing was about planning in the long term, sort of like trying to open up more the conversation, try to agree more before starting to think too much on what or how or processes. Just sort of try to agree on the direction for the long term, and then start to work backwards. I guess pretty much that.
Yeah, I like the 3 tiers, and I do think perhaps the time intervals could be stretched a little bit, but I do think that having it kind of largely centers around 3 areas of community building, networking, kind of becoming the Schelling point for the token engineering community, making sure that our infrastructure, building out our infrastructure, making sure that it's good and sustainable over the long term. And then, of course, the purpose that we have as the TEC and how we can service token engineering field and the token engineers that are within it. And so I think that's the big broad area. And then in the short term, just setting up the foundation for those and then connecting it. How do we get from setting up the foundation to looking at the long term, and then what are the pieces that are in between that need to be accomplished in order to hit that roadmap?
Okay, so we're intentionally not gonna get into the specifics of the strategic planning right now, but we will be doing that soon. So okay, this is all good feedback. I'm getting the sense like, hey, we need the balance here. That's pretty clear, and focus on the why first and get agreement there before diving into the what and the how. Any last comment before we go on to TAM and the upcoming call? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thanks everybody for your input on this. This will help to shape this. Tam, do you want to tell us what you came up with?
Yeah, sure. I'll even just share the doc and talk about it. So the idea of doing the Twitter space for this sort of like end of year celebration and 100th community call seems to be coming together. So we have a bunch of yeses, 17 so far and a few maybes. And really the purpose is just to have some fun and have a laugh and look back at all that we've accomplished together this year. So I put together just a short talking track. It really depends who shows up, who to ask what question to, but there's a bunch of questions that are really general that we can always fall back on if we're not sure what question to ask. Or if there's somebody and we want to ask a really specific question, I think that's also fun too. So I think the challenge that we have with doing the community call on Twitter Space is that there's 10 speakers at a time, and then the 2 co-hosts, and Acid will be a host and I'll be a host. And then we should have at least 10 people coming in and out of those 10 speaker roles. So, if people are done talking, they can, I guess, relinquish the speaker role, or we could, kick some people out of the speaker role to invite other people up. So I guess we should have about 10 speakers at all times, but there should be a bunch of people who haven't spoken yet in that group. I guess Acid Laser went out and created a really cute POAP for this. So all the links are ready. And he's going to be looking at the lists of people who join. And then at the end, TEC Twitter will DM them a POAP link. So anyone who joins will end up getting the POAP that Acid created just for this. And then I guess, I really wanted to start it with the update on the funding from the TEC. I went back and just calculated there's about 300K that we have provided for this group here of projects. So I think that's really cool. That's like a nice way to start off. And then asking questions about what people feel and think about the TEC. This is a list of questions. Please feel free to hop in and make suggestions or improvements or other questions you think that would be fun. The whole point of this is just for us to have fun and share our, reminisce about 2022, maybe make some projections for 2023. So I'd love to hear any feedback or feel free to drop stuff in the doc. That's it, really.
I think this is so awesome. Tam, thank you. I mean, this will be so cool, actually, if we can master kind of a new format for the community call that's like really out there on Twitter and public. It's really cool. Thank you. It should be fun, too. Anybody have other thoughts before we move on? Questions? No? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next section, which is like roles, basically. So how do we talk about this in a way that doesn't seem like overly bureaucratic, but also acknowledges the fact that we need some accountability, and we need people to be able to know what they're doing on a regular basis. So I've been, over the last several years, really interested in holacracy, what those guys have done. It's not perfect by any stretch, but like no organizational structure is. And, we're basically trying to come up with like the next way of organizing work. And we don't really like the old hierarchies, but we haven't quite found the new structure for containing accountability structures, really, basically, without having kind of role-based power dynamics. So, let me rephrase that more precisely. In the old hierarchy structure, basically, people's roles were defined by where they were in the hierarchy and who you reported to. We don't have that. We don't want that. So how do we make sure that the old way of holding people accountable, which is that your boss told you whether or not you're doing a good job, how do we replace that with something that is not like that, but that actually does work? So that's what we're stepping into here. And lots of people have played with different things. I was having a conversation with Griff yesterday about what they do in Giveth with the buddy system. Very interesting. So we're going to be looking at a lot of different approaches. But to begin with, the one thing that we knew we needed to do, and Bear's been leading the charge on this, is define the actual work that we know needs to get done in the TEC. Otherwise, things don't function. And so the thing that's cool about holacracy is that they have this one phrase, which is roles, not souls. So what you do for any organization is you just objectively define all of the like down to like pretty low level detail, the various roles that need to be played out in the organization in order for it to function. And so you do that and you don't attach any names to it. There's no person attached to it. You just basically objectively list that out and you maintain that as a document or like a set of it doesn't have to be a document, but you somehow have to document those roles and define what they are. And then over time, what you do is you allow people to kind of flow in and out of those roles over time as their interests change, as their time availability changes, et cetera. So that's what we're looking at right now. And this is still a work in progress, but we've made some good progress, and Bear's going to give us an update.
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. Yeah, so like Gideon was mentioning, this idea of roles but not souls, I think this could be really helpful for us to start organizing the work and try to cover all the activities and all the functional needs that we already define that are needed for the TEC to properly function, right? I think there might be some of them that are more crucial than others, but at the end, I think it's important to cover everything. And to do that, it's important to also give a sense of ownership, of responsibility, and also of freedom for people to be able to take decisions, to make decisions within a specific set of boundaries. That in this case is a role that has certain accountabilities attached to it. So if you want, Gideon, if you could share here screen, or if people want to click on the first link that says role creation process, we can check on that one first. And for this one, the idea was to just first show kind of like the structure that we're thinking for roles, and what do we mean for each of the bullet points, and then it's just kind of like I forgot the word in English, but it's just a way to start looking at all the different the 11 functional needs that we previously defined, and just seeing all the roles that are attached to each one of them. So let's just go first to the structure that each role would have. We were thinking on each of them having a purpose, just saying like a capacity, potential, or what's the goal that the role needs to pursue or that it needs to express on behalf of the organization, So at the end is like what really describes what the role is meant to do. The domains, it says we use them to centralize control and provide everyone the authority to take any action or making a decision to fulfill the role's purpose or accountabilities. Domains are like a place of property controlled exclusively by a role. For example, like the official mail list or the hiring process or the website, or YouTube, or like certain platforms, or it's just like the piece of land or like the property that this role owns and that needs to take care of. The weekly hours required, well, I think that's really self-explanatory. It's just like an estimate that hopefully every time with time passing, we can be more precise on how many hours this role requires to be successfully completed every week. The primary accountability is just simply the person who will be taking on that role, the main responsible for that role. And accountable for, or the accountabilities, is just the list of all the activities that this role needs to take care of. I think it's pretty simple. I think it's try to again keep this idea of radical simplification. If you want, now we can take a look at example as taking technology support as a functional need that we know it's really important, and it's probably one of the bigger ones in the TEC. And what we did here is just to kind of like start creating some like smaller roles that are really focused into specific tasks. Like for example, the first one is the credentials manager, right? What's the purpose of that? To create, to review, to maintain the credential management best practices. What's their domains? Well, probably like the Discord server, probably the Twitter and all the platforms that we use, so we can list all of those there in the domains for that role. Weekly hours required. Well, that's uh, again, this is not a final product, of course. This is all yet to be finalized, and to something really important is to start gathering the feedback from the people that are mostly involved in these activities already, that maybe they don't have the role yet, but they are doing the work already. So it's important that they feel comfortable and that they think that all the work that needs to be done is covered by the role. So for example, in this case, Rex, it would be great for him to be here. I'll share this with him later, but it's just like getting now into that process of feedback and improvement for each of these roles. So just like credentials manager, we have multi-sig manager, we have a data analyst. I think if we go a little bit to the bottom, Gideon, I think there's one or more two roles, like the video and audio recorder. That's also a good one. That, for example, that currently I do those activities, and it's really self-explanatory. So if at certain point I can't do it anymore, or someone else wants to take on it, this role is what we refer that person to. And yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I can stop there for a bit, see what people think. Some first impressions. I also think that feedback will be needed, but and more, maybe you will need more time to think it through and think about it before providing it. But some first impressions would be also really appreciated. And then I think we can jump into one more section that I think is pretty cool.
Could I ask a question, Bear?
Yeah.
Is it the way you've posed it? Is it going to be somebody who's going to be in charge of the entire domain, or not the domain, the category, and then we'll have different people within each role, or is there just people in each role and nobody's really looking at the entire thing? So like technology support.
That's a great question. I think for this initial stage, I think it would be important maybe just to focus on finding and assigning people on each of the roles to try to cover all the activities. But medium, long term, I think yes, ideally, it will be important that some person emerges to be kind of like the technology support coordinator role, right? That will be kind of like the bigger role that will be in charge of coordinating and supporting and taking care of the whole category or the whole function. And then you will have people assigned to each of the roles, and they will start working kind of like as a team, right? The team of technology support. So yeah, the answer is yes, but yeah, maybe like I was thinking on more of a second stage for that.
Yeah, can I add one thing to that? So that question, Nate, is one that Bear and I went around on a few times. And I think that, what we don't want to do is create like a bunch of little fiefdoms, where you've got like, I am the manager of technology, and no, we don't want that, right? So, but I do think that if we think about it as like the coordinator who's making sure that like, hey, if there's some new roles that are emerging in the area of technology, that person is responsible for looking out for the holes, like where are the holes in this thing, and making sure that we don't have those holes, right? So they're kind of like taking the big picture perspective, but it's like it's specifically a role, right? It's not like I'm in charge of all you guys who are doing the technology stuff. So that's one thing. And then the last thing I just wanted to add to before we open it up is, in a way, like you can think of this as being complementary to the advice process. Advice process is basically clearing up space for duocracy, right? It's like, we don't want to get stuck in the hell of like consensus paralysis, right? And so advice process, when well executed, gives people the freedom. You need to go talk to the people who are involved in the decision, but once you've gotten that feedback, you can execute. And similarly, what we're trying to do here is creating little buckets or little bubbles or cells. Maybe think, if you like biology, you think of it as like little cells that can run, in these defined areas. They don't have to like keep asking for permission to do things. It's the permission is assumed within the role. And so we don't get stuck, like we're freeing people up to just do. So that I just wanted to add that. So any other questions or thoughts or disagreements or whatever, now's a great time to talk about this.
I was just going to say that, go ahead, Tam. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. You go first.
So no, I had been putting some thoughts into this from the perspective of the stewards transformation aspect of it, and having the individuals who are looking at kind of these broader categories such as technology support, and having this kind of accountability structure that we were wanting to really implement that's kind of like rigorous, where we say, hey, we occasionally have this review process where each of these roles are reviewed on a recurring basis, and saying, hey, have these activities been fulfilled? Is this person serving this role in a proper way? And making sure that we have that accountability there, to where we have the roles in place, and having some type of oversight where it's not committed to the day-to-day operations of things, but kind of saying, hey, I'm responsible for making sure that this area is accountable and people are doing what they said they're going to do.
I have some thoughts to share too. If I could jump in, I'll jump in. So I really like this. This is really nice. I guess there's some thoughts that came to mind immediately. This idea of holacracy and roles, and we used to use the phrasing energizing roles for the stewards, and the idea was that it wasn't a title, it wasn't a structure like a hierarchy. It was just people who had the bandwidth to steward in the TEC would energize the steward role and then leave and let somebody else energize that role. And so I think that we were semi-successful, or maybe we failed there in terms of like being able to move in and out of stewardship. I think that was very difficult. Offboarding was something that felt difficult for people to leave behind. So I guess I just want to say that I'd love for us to try this again. I mean, to try this and be more successful in it this time, with this idea of walking in and out of roles. But in my limited experience with it so far, it does feel like people do get attached to their roles, and it's more something that becomes part of their identity. For whatever that's worth, it's just something to maybe watch out for. And then I'm jumping into the technology role support, and I'm sort of seeing this weekly hours required. I like the idea of having some sort of ballpark for weekly hours, just so you can get an idea of what sort of compensation should look like. But so many of these are, even the first one, credentials management. Okay, it might be 5 hours a week until you do a security audit, and then it's 40 hours a week for 3 weeks. So much of this like ebbs and flows in the amount of hours that's actually required for these roles, depending on the kind of projects that's being worked on. So just another thought, there's going to be times where the weekly hour is wildly off because there's like some large project that role has to undertake.
Super valuable feedback. Thank you, both of you. That's great.
I would also add about the roles. This is something that I've thought very recently, is that while we want to ensure flexibility, I think roles can also boost sort of performance and focus, and I think that's we've kind of been experiencing that as well. Like if you look very closely, even though we don't have fixed roles, everyone has taken sort of their space in those set roles, and being able to keep them flexible, but also being able to set some stuff in that regard, I think can also help everyone.
Yeah, and if I could just add two more things, because I think Tam hit something that's really important to me in terms of the observation that roles do become identities, but roles are also very, very important for ensuring that individuals know what they're responsible for. And I think that's really, really important on the other side of that. And so having that balance, I don't know the solution for that, but I think that's something that needs to be addressed. There's like a balance between those two extremes. And then the other thing that is concerning for me is that there are a lot of roles, and there's I don't know what 5-6 of us on the coordination team, and so individual capacity for these roles really needs to be evaluated as we start to assign each other these roles, because like Tam said, that one role could experience a lot of influx at one time, and perhaps they own several roles that do that same thing. And so I think evaluating individual capacity for each of these roles is really important to look at.
Great. These are great pieces of feedback. We're going to talk in a second about how we are thinking about implementing this, just from like a systems perspective, but also I just wanted to highlight what's above here, because there are some of these roles that we know already. So like a lot of the stuff that Rex is doing, those, and actually some of the stuff Bear's doing, these are things that are like, these are known. Then there's what we're going to do is that we're going to do an experiment a little bit around interest groups, which is basically defining a role for something that's not known. And how do people step into those roles, right? Sometimes we're going to have a role that nobody's going to want to do, right? Cleaning out the stables. Well, we don't have that, but if we did have that, probably people wouldn't want to do that. So like, and then there's going to be some roles where like people are going to want to, a lot of people are going to want to do it. And we're going to need a process for picking like who's going to be the person who will be, ultimately accountable. So you'll see right here, this like question of, these are some things that we were putting together as like, how do we determine in a flat, non-hierarchical world, how do we decide who gets to take what roles, right? And so these were some factors: passion/interest, obviously; time availability, that's a clear one; skills, that's really important; and then also reputation for accountability, like what's your track record. So those were some factors that we were thinking about for people stepping into a newly defined role. And then the last point I just wanted to make is echoing what Nate is talking about the 5 or 6 people. Like, I think we haven't nailed this part yet, and so I'd be really interested in hearing from people who are not on the coordination team, in particular. The coordination team can't do all the work in the TEC. Like, it's just not going to scale. Just won't scale. We'll fail, actually. So we got to figure out ways to be able to scale out the work and allow other contributors to take on some of this work. And so actually, Mitch and I were talking yesterday. I had a really good call with Mitch about praise and how, like, for instance, like interest groups, that really should be volunteer driven, right? That should be like praise driven. Praise should be the primary way that we acknowledge people's work in the interest groups, aside from the interest group coordinator. But I'm curious what people think about that. Like, how do we deal with that, and how do we coordinate between this coordination team and then the rest of the people who might want to contribute?
I think that something that would be really good is to not like try to take decisions from the group, but to involve the community in the decision making process, and the group is more like an executive group. And yeah, this goes along with this idea of also encouraging participation and like active voting on the community. I think yeah, that would be a good way to involve people. And also when you involve people, you also receive feedback, and maybe that would also help us to find the people who would be like willing or interested in taking any of the workflows.
I also, I'm going to jump in. I think that this coordination team, the way it's starting, is really just the first iteration, and I think it's going to grow and develop in interesting ways. I wouldn't think that this, 5 or 6 member coordination team has to do all the work, and I think there should be some accommodation for a contributor who has an expertise in one particular area and wants to contribute in one particular role and doesn't want to be on the coordination team. I'm just like, that's the special skill that they have, and that's what they can offer to the TEC. And we could definitely find ways to facilitate their contribution. Credentials management might be interesting, or marketing might be interesting, or some of these really specific expertise where somebody can bring a lot of their expertise and skill and know-how and contribute to the TEC without having to become a role under the coordination team, if that makes sense. So I even, or maybe they could have a special role, but I guess as I'm speaking, I guess I'm sort of coming towards this idea that these roles can be created for the members inside the coordination team or general contributors as well. And maybe there's a bounty, maybe there's a bounty for that piece of work, or maybe it's just praise. And I think that can also be better analyzed and understood.
Hey, I'm gonna jump in there. I agree with Tim. I was like listening to everybody talk. I was thinking like, how could we get contributors from outside of the coordination team to also help with coordination, but not having a role in the coordination team, but like really contributors. And also, like Tim said, like maybe it's a bounty, but how can we find like anywhere in the space where those people can help with? Like what is the need that coordination has in terms of like how can I find where can I contribute to, if it makes sense.
Bianca, let me just clarify. You're saying how can the coordination team help people who are not on the coordination team find ways to plug in and contribute?
Yeah, like how, what are the things that like you need people to contribute to, and how can people outside of the team find those like those things that you are looking for contributors?
That's great. Yeah. And welcome, Angie. Good to have you here, Angie Bear.
Hi, thank you.
I also think that for these, there's still a bigger question of say the quote unquote roadmap, because lots of these things, lots of the roles, the necessities, how exactly the coordination team is going to coordinate, um, is going to be dependent on what is that we choose to do for the next 6 months, the next year, whatever. Um, and those are things that we are going to be, I guess, learning and testing out as we find that out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't, what I'm about to say is not a well researched or completely well thought out idea, but I'll say it anyways. My gut instinct is that what we need to be doing is when it comes to adding more stuff on the plate, we're going to have to be super careful about the coordination team and not stretching it too thin. So a lot of the work is going to be getting rid of processes, like constantly looking at like, is this really the best thing that we could be doing given this new thing? What can we get rid of? So that's one thing. And then the second thing that I think is more exciting is finding ways, as Tam and Bianca and several of you have been saying, for people beyond the coordination team to contribute. And I would love to see us figure out a way to make that, whatever compensation that is, happen in TEC token, right? Like, so praise is the obvious one, but it's like, how do we make sure that for this bigger set of contributions that are outside of the coordination team, and maybe even the coordination team itself, like that we start shifting away from DAI and moving more of the compensation to like getting the economy going and actually using TEC as the method of payment. Okay, so thoughts on that?
Yeah, sorry, I had to step out. So I don't see part of the notes here. Sorry, we can scroll down a little bit. So you're talking about paying people in TEC? Yes.
Yeah, we were just talking. The question came up like, how do we, all the work can't be done by the coordination team, obviously. So like, how does the coordination team facilitate and help coordinate anybody to come in, and what's the incentives look like? And I was just suggesting that's like, hey, in order to scale, we really need to shift that over to more like TEC rather than DAI as the way that we compensate if we're using economic incentives.
Mm-hmm. To pay people outside of the coordination team.
Yeah, and maybe someday, hopefully, coordination team itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, praise seems like a no-brainer. Using the reward system to bring in people and give them something without having to fork out precious stables from your treasury. And I mean, that's what a lot of communities do, right? Just to bring in people who want to create some value and then get retroactively rewarded for it. And maybe it might make sense, like if you wanted to use TEC, like rather give people a portion in TEC rather than all in TEC, because that's kind of scary for people who are depending on that stable income. That's what I got. I'll pass it to the next person.
I will say that the biggest issue with TEC and paying in TEC is that TEC tokens are very hard to come by. And until we have adequate purchasing of TEC tokens or minting of TEC tokens, I think this was really difficult, because I do think TEC tokens could be used in more productive ways, just in particular, governance swaps or empowering, TE firms and institutions to actually participate in the governance of the TEC. And so, there's a cost to minting these TEC tokens, and if we're going to have the reward system and paying contributors and TEC tokens, I find that to be a little bit difficult in the short term. Perhaps long term, it's feasible, but I think right now one of the downsides of the ABC is that we don't have an unlimited supply of TEC tokens to have. They need to be minted.
I think there's also about the TC token. There's also the thing of the tributes and stuff. Like one of my understanding was that the advantage of having the ABC was to be able to pay for expenses in a more widely accepted currency like DAI, and now like paying for people in TC with a 12% execute in some of the stuff seems like a way to make TC more useful at the cost of contributors. Like I think we can still find ways to use TC productively but in a more positive way for any use case. And then about contributions in general, I think we shouldn't be too worried about that. Like, I think we should try to come up with a structure that enables the coordination team to always be open and be of help to the TC in general, but also um, but I also think that there's many ways and that not everything has to go through the coordination team. Like, I don't think like the TC has a wide range of token holders and stakeholders in general, and I think there's multiple opportunities for people to um, jump in. That doesn't necessarily mean putting more overhead on the coordination team. Like, I don't know, depending on how you say it, the academy is now closer to a working group that's been sustained and contributing to the TEC in other senses, and that doesn't mean that their work is in any way being supported or coordinated by the coordination team.
So personally, I'm all for us compensating folk in TEC. And I think we can either supplement, if we don't change the 12% tribute, which we could change, then we can factor that into compensation costs. I like the idea of of course, people would have to sell their TEC to pay their bills. And I think that's part of this economy. I don't think that we should shy away from compensating people fairly in TEC. And then when we have to mint more, we have to mint more. I think we have a big enough stash at the moment, though, that we could actually run a long time by compensating people in TEC if we were to repurpose them from laser tag.
Would that require removing it from the secondary market? Are they locked up in LPs?
I believe there's just some sitting idle. I'll have to check. Mitch might know off the top of his head.
What do I know off the top of my head?
If there is idle TEC in the laser TSIG.
Oh, hell yeah, there is. Been trying to move that for a while. There's like 75,000 TC or something crazy in there.
Okay, and so that's separate from liquidity.
I mean, we haven't done anything with it. We wanted to use liquidity, and then people didn't want to do it. So that stuff's just been sitting in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is noted in there. Clearly, there's some opportunity for using the TEC that we have that's just sitting there. There's also it's complicated, but there's a bunch of TEC in the water pool as well. But
Leave it. Don't do it.
yeah, I hear you. Like a lot of people. I mean, there are a lot of people who are like, don't touch that, and there's good reason to leave it. There's liquidity. It's like it is playing a role in providing liquidity. But I'm just saying, in terms of the TEC that's out there, there's two sources there's two chunks of it. One is in laser tag and one is in water.
I mean, just to play devil's advocate for a minute, if we compensate people in XDAI, we still have to get the XDAI. So it's just one step more to get TEC. I don't actually see there's any quote unquote savings if we don't compensate in TEC. I mean, there may be some slim margin, right, for the tributes, but we could also change the tributes. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but we could do a pros and cons on changing tributes and do a more careful analysis of impact from what that would result in.
I'm not like opposed to paying in TC, but I don't really see any actual justification. Like if we were to take it from laser tag, then there's the whole process or um, of passing proposals in conviction voting that usually is what determines the what the token holders want. Although we can probably do that with a snapshot, but not using conviction voting. And then if we were to use conviction voting, like first laser tag, maybe not right now, but I have the feeling that there's going to be a chance to use all that TC in a more productive way than to start burning it, because paying people is going to burn most of that, and then taking XDAI out of the common pool is going to be harder, because it is harder right now to pass any proposal. Now put, I don't know, the 12% tribute on top of that, so that people doesn't have to um, take on the tribute themselves. It's 12% more to ask on the common pool, and that's more conviction for, at the end of the day, have XDAI on the contributor's hands. Uh, Maybe makes more sense to compensate some of that with TC, but I'm not really sure if there's really any net benefit of using TC when we have DAI available, and it's the currency that goes out of the common pool anyways.
Okay, I'm going to try to wrangle this back. Clearly, this question. So we're talking about roles, and we ended up getting focused on this question of compensation. I actually started this, I think. So clearly, this is an area that we should be looking at a little bit more closely. So we'll add this to one of the things we come back to later. And sounds like there are a few people who have some advice on this. Mitch, clearly you have like a perspective on this from the praise hat, but also just more generally. And I'm hearing Tam and Nate and NT pretty actively engaged in this. So when we come back to this, we may circle back and tap you guys to just help think about that. That's okay. Bear, do you want to just tell us really quick, because we're going to go on in a sec to talk about the interest groups, but do you want to just tell people how you're thinking about this in terms of actually making this work?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just really quickly, if you just want to click the link, that one, yeah. Yeah, so we were also thinking on how could we, going back to this idea of the roles, how could we organize this in an accessible and open way for everyone to take a look at and be able to see all the roles and all the people owning the roles and everything, and also do it in clarity that for now it's being the main platform we're using to coordinate. So we created this kind of like this document within Clarity, super simple, just listing all the different functional needs, clusters, areas, categories, however we want to call them. And the idea would be that under each one of those, they will be listed all the roles corresponding to that area. Just as an example, there in technology support, I just created one that is the video audio recorder, right? So what I was thinking is just creating a task for each of the roles in Clarity, and just adding the structure for the role to the task. And then here it's pretty easy to assign like the primary accountability, or like the owner of the role with Clarity, right? So they're like, the assignee would be me, and we would have like all the roles there being listed, and it would be really easy to see which ones are taken already and which ones do we need to find someone else to take care to take on them. So that's part of it. And then if you could go to the other link, Gideon, from the agenda. The other part of it is this idea of kind of like creating some type of profile for each of the members that start like owning roles. Oh no, that's broken. That's not working. I don't know if you could filter it. That this exact view, if you could just filter it with the tag role and the assigner me. I think I didn't save it. So the idea would be to have like kind of like this profile where you could take a look at and just if you could add as another filter, Gideon, there's like an option to add tags. Yeah, and the tag is role. It's right there. Yeah. So that should be the view, the view set for this. So it's kind of like the idea to have like a profile view for each of the members, so we can look at all the roles that they are taking on. There's probably a better way to do this. I was thinking that probably Rex or Enti might have also an alternative for displaying this. But for now, this is just like super simple that we came up with. And like in this case, this is like my profile, and I would have assigned this video audio recorder role. And if I had more roles, then you would see all my roles that are assigned to me on this view. And it would be like that for all the members with roles. And yeah, that would be kind of like this is just like the initial iteration for this experiment of roles and using Clarity with it. I don't know if anyone has any quick comments, or if we should just jump into the next section.
I think that what we should do is move on, because we have 20 minutes before the Twitter space, and let's use. So I'd like to be able to give us 5-minute break to before we move on. So let's move on, and if people have comments, you can either put them into the channel, the coordination channel, or you can put, if you have access to Clarity, you can just put them as notes right in here. And for people who want access to Clarity, you don't have it, edit access, just ping me or Bear, and we'll give it to you. Okay, so next thing we want to do is go on to the interest groups. This is a new service, I guess you could call it, for the TEC. And this is the doc that actually, hold on just one second. We're running a little bit short on time compared to what I thought. So I think we're probably not going to have time to do a breakout. So let's do this instead. Okay, so the background on this right now is that we've got a few interest groups that are starting up. I think most people on this call are familiar with what the interest group is, but just briefly, the idea is it's like a very lightweight way of doing a working group, but you don't need to go and get funding for it. It's just a very simple process of setting one up. There's an application that is just like a Google form that Bear's pulled together. That basically is, what we're checking is does this align with the mission? And the idea is to make it super easy to start these things up, but also super easy to just put them in hibernation if they're not getting a lot of traction. The question that we're looking at, and we've got a few of them that there's one that's pretty active that just started last week, which is YGG's new incarnation of labs, which is pretty cool. And then there's a few others that are starting to, like the data one that Rex launched is starting to spin up right now. So the question is, we're probably going to need somebody to be here coordinating these interest groups and making sure that they're running okay. And this would, unlike, if you run, if you're the person who's spearheading an interest group, that's not a paid position. We're thinking that this would be praise-centric compensation, and we need to. I was talking with Mitch about this yesterday. It's we've got to make sure that culture of praise is really deeply embedded into the interest group and the culture that we're building. So I'm setting that aside. The question now is to have a role on this, at least to start on this coordination team. What would that look like? What would be the requirements of that role? So Bear took a crack at that, and that's this document right here. So I'm going to just leave this up for a sec, and people can just absorb this, and it would be great to get some feedback on this. And can everybody read that okay? If not, let me know and I can try to zoom in.
If not, I can also like read it really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead, Bear. Why don't you do that?
Yeah. The role being calling it interest group coordinator. The purpose of it, providing support and coordination in the creation and operations of interest groups. The domains, all the different documents that I've been working on, like the requirements, the submission form, and some others that I think are needed, but that this is all for discussion. Again, the weekly hours required, primary accountability. That's part of the idea to define who could take on this, and the accountabilities being the main contact point for any interest groups members, leads, and answering any related questions, supporting community members in the interest group creation process, providing corresponding TEC support infrastructure upon request to interest groups, ensuring interest groups fulfill the corresponding requirements for their creation and ongoing operations, maintaining and improving interest groups documentation in a regular basis, assigning lead roles in the Discord server, coming up with new ways to improve interest groups in the TC. So this is just like a first draft. It's really open for any new thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome. I think one of the big aspects for me in terms of the interest groups is how we integrate the curation service, if we can. I mean, I don't think it should be a requirement. I think a lot of this should have emergent properties, having these interest groups define how they meet, what they talk about, what they do, but encouraging people to incorporate the curation service as they go along. And then, this role being somebody who is kind of, also looking at the bigger ideas that we have around the interest groups and maybe even the digital conference that we've discussed before, and how we can have people from these interest groups being represented at such a conference and saying, hey, what kind of projects do you want to work on that relates to that interest group area, and just things of that nature. So I think it's cool. Really good job, Bear.
Anyone else, like any other thoughts, ideas, concerns?
I mean, I can only say I love how clear, simple, and organized it is.
Well, okay, so that's good. Clear and simple is good. Let me ask this then. So when it comes to this role, okay, so this is where we're getting into the unknown territory. Like I have no idea how many people are interested in fulfilling this role of interest group coordination. So just out of curiosity, maybe you can just like do a high five or thumbs up or some emoji if this is something that you're interested in doing. I see Nate. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. And who would be interested in being consulted on this? You know, like in the advice process, like you would like to be able to provide advice as we're structuring this, what this looks like. Similar thing, thumbs up or whatever.
I just
No.
have a question. Is there going to be like a communications role for in this new new thing? Because you know my responsibilities about Twitter or graphic design and all that stuff. Because I would love to contribute in this role too. But if there's going to be an special communications roles, I want to be 100% focused on that.
Or maybe we can see the rest of the roles before choosing.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great comment. If you go to the main document, kind of like the root document, you can see like the 11 corresponding functional needs, and yeah, one of them is communications. You can take a look at them, but it's important to mention that it's by no means finished at all. Like there's still like tons of work to do in terms of like defining roles, creating roles, defining roles, assigning roles. So it's kind of like just in a first version. The idea with this, just really quickly, would be to also start incorporating ideas and feedback and necessities for role creation from people. So, for example, as did you will see in the communications doc a couple of roles that we've been thinking of, but I'm pretty sure there will be lots of more. So if you have ideas, you can start like commenting, adding stuff, and it's the same thing for everyone else. If there's any area that you're interested in and you're thinking, oh, I think we should have a role on this, you can start adding any feedback, and we'll start giving it some shape as well.
And I would say that, communications would be a huge part of this role, like in terms of, relying on the communications role, like to promote interest groups and things like that. So I think you can have a communications role and still be, a big part of these other roles as well.
I also wonder if there's some role related to like HR, because yeah, gravity punctually like tackles on conflicts, but there are multiple human needs that the community can have, and it would be good for someone to be there as this visible face for these human things that can happen and these human relationships.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We haven't been thinking about that as much, but I think that's as we let go of the reins a little bit and we allow the community to lead in these interest groups, it's really cool. It's going to help us to scale. It's going to do all kinds of great things, but it is going to create a little bit more of like a social media kind of like online community kind of thing where there may be some bad things that happen as a result too, right? So yeah, we're going to need some processes in place to make sure people are safe and and that we're adhering to the mission too. So yeah, I made a note on that. We can maybe circle back with you and Bianca on that, get some thoughts. Okay, any other comments or thoughts on this? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the good news is we can end 8 minutes early and people can go do whatever they need to do before the Twitter Space call. So thank you everybody for coming today. This was the first of this new format. I hope that people found it useful and productive, and like if you've got feedback on how you could see this format improving or these meetings going better, then just drop me a note. That's probably the easiest thing. Just DM me and I'm happy to. Or, if you want to keep it public, actually that even better, actually do it in the coordination channel. Just do it let's do that. Just do it in the coordination channel if you've got some feedback on how you'd like this to improve. All right. Yeah, Wonka?
Yeah, Gideon, nothing that if someone wants to stay in these last 5 minutes, I would like to share some of the work that we've been doing on the Gravity website, because we've been doing it inside of our group, but we haven't showed it, and I would like to, I don't know, to present it and to receive your feedback, but only to the people that want to stay.
Absolutely. I'll stay for sure. Yeah, maybe what we can do is just do it for 4 minutes, and then that will give people time to get over to the Twitter space. And anybody else who wants to leave, feel free to leave. And those who'd like to see the website, please stay.
And I will also send out a reminder to everybody that if you want to join the Twitter spaces and speak, you must be on your cell phone.
Good point. Yes. Okay. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you. Thanks so much for coming today.
Bye.
Thanks, Gideon.
Bye. All right, Juanca, take it away.
Okay. So it's still unpublished, but it says this is our main. It says Gravity DAO brings people together, and these are the 4 services that we are trying to shape as our offering of value. The first one being trust creation for human-centered coordination. The second one being a culture consultancy to support the building of comprehensive systems. The third one is conflict management, that would be for professional facilitation. And the fourth one is education and training. So if you click, for example, in education and training, this will bring you to this tab here. And here we have the playlist of the third, the second, and the first Graviton training with the study plans. And we have here some assets. But we are also thinking, and that's our hope for next year, to launch a full online course as the TE Academy, like TE Fundamentals, so that people don't have to wait for us to deliver time and effort to make a course on a time set, but that it can be taken at any point. So yeah, on the other services, for example, in culture consultancy, this is something really cool, and it's that we will try to provide observation of the agreements and behavior that take place in a community with recommendations for desired type of interactions. So here are some words about the service and some virtuous cycles. Here we have also some content like memes we've done and small
sometimes when you go to spread
highlights of the Graviton trainings. So we have this same for services and for trust creation and for conflict management.
I think it's so special to have.
And we have this portfolio that are the communities where we've had presence. And these are the 4 communities where we've had the most, or where we had our where we've developed our frameworks and practiced them. So, for example, you can filter them through categories, and we've provided conflict management to these 4 categories in some way or another. But for example, for the culture consultancy, we only did that for Aragon. We haven't done that for any of the other communities. But in education and training, we have the Token Engineering Commons and Giveth and Aragon, and also in trust creation, the Token Engineering Commons. So yeah, we also have this blog with some of the content that we had in our Medium, but the idea is to feel it better. We have contact forms, and we also have buttons to incentivize donations through either Giveth or Gitcoin. And if you want like support managing conflicts, we will have these new forms. So we will stop using the common stack type form, and this will be our own internal form that has these first two like divisions, and it's when it's an individual request or an organizational request. And yeah, that's mostly how the page will work. To find new cases outside of the TEC, to find new communities that may want some of our services, and also maybe to funnel some other more technical or specific services to one of these other communities. So yeah, I just wanted to share this.
That's awesome. That's a great website. Congratulations. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Cool website.
Really cool, Hunka. Yeah.
Clearly a lot of work. All right. See you all over on Twitter soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank
See ya.
you.